YouTube? This is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we're going to talk some steals you may find in your rookie drafts. Now, I have done probably about 10 rookie drafts so far, and there are some players that are just consistently falling in the third round that I think will have some value for you even this season. They don't necessarily have to be taxi squad players that I think actually have some value, even though you're drafting them in the third round. Now, again, you guys can obviously follow some of my other drafts that I've got going on, especially how if you're one quarterback, super flex, how that first round should look like. And of course, I'm going to have even more content out to help you guys with your dynasty and rookie drafts. So we're going to jump right into this. I have 5 guys that I think you should be looking at in your third round, and an honorable mention as well that I think would have some value for you guys. So we're talking players that have been falling maybe because of the combine, maybe because of where they got drafted, or a lot of other players have kind of jumped up because of realistically their draft position. And draft capital plays a big part in this. Some of these guys unfortunately fell, didn't get the draft capital that you were hoping, and now you're kind of feeling the same way. You're putting them in your third round. Now, the first guy I want to mention, and this is going to be a big one for me, that I felt was kind of shocking, is Javon Baker for the Patriots. Look, I get it. He's from UCF, not a big school that a lot of people think about when you're talking college football. They did have that one year, which was amazing. Javon Baker came from Alabama, went to UCF to actually have a starting role. And some people question that, right? People question the fact that why couldn't you have done it in Alabama? Obviously, if you can't do it in Alabama, then maybe that doesn't necessarily translate in the NFL because that's obviously a big school, big competition. But I think this is going to be a nice little secret play here because Javon Baker's definitely falling in most third round picks. You'd probably get him in the 305 to 308 range. And I get it. There's an uncertainty at the quarterback position. You got Drake May. Nobody knows how that's going to play out, especially with a rookie. You've got competition in Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, right? Those guys are already established. Juju Smith-Schuster. And now Javon Baker becomes the third. And you got Polk, who's also there. Like, they went wide receiver heavy. I'm a big believer in Javon Baker. I think his ability, his route running was really crisp and clean. He had some great catch radius. I mean, he made some big plays for UCF. And I thought, why not grab him in my third round? I probably have about 4 or 5 shares of him, even though I don't necessarily need him. And he probably will be a taxi squad player on my rosters, but I think he might have some instant value this coming season, depending on how your roster is built out. If you've got a pretty deep roster, or if you've got many flex plays or wide receiver positions. I like Javon Baker in the Patriots aspect because I think he does have some value. I know he's going to be forgotten about, but I think he's somebody you're definitely worth grabbing and you might want to stash on your team. Another receiver that I'm going to mention, and again, I think this is just, I'm not sure why he's falling into the third round. It's going to be Roman Wilson for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, Roman Wilson is now landed in a great spot. He's one of my favorite players in this draft because of where his draft position was. Pittsburgh, obviously, you've got George Pickens. And I think Roman actually can end up falling as the wide receiver 2 in this roster. Now, there's going to be some uncertainty with the whole offensive scheme. You've got Najee Harris, you got Jalen Warren, and I think Pittsburgh is going to plan to use those guys pretty heavily. But with Russell Wilson at quarterback, I think they're actually going to be confident in using him and actually being able to throw the football down the field, not kind of handicapping him like they did with Kenny Pickett, who unfortunately was not really the answer for Pittsburgh. So now you've got Russell Wilson, who does have a lot to prove, who can get the ball down the field. He's got a beautiful deep ball. And now you've got Roman Wilson, who's not going to get a lot of opportunities, I think, right at the beginning of the season, but I think he's going to grow and I think he's going to have value later on in this season. I think he's got pretty quick instant value, even in redraft. And we'll talk about that later into this summer about redraft, but I think he's got even some value in redraft. He's not somebody I'm going to put in my taxi squad. He's somebody that I think can have some playability this upcoming season. And the fact that he's falling in most drafts going into the mid to late third round, I think is an absolute steal. There's no reason Roman Wilson should fall that far. I get it. Coming from a Michigan team that didn't throw the ball a lot, there's a lot to be desired. There's a lot of uncertainty of how Roman's going to translate into the NFL. but I think he's going to translate pretty well. I think his size, his route running, his hands, his speed, I think it's actually going to do a phenomenal job in the NFL. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers got a steal out of him, and I think you're going to get a steal out of him in your draft as well. Another player I'm going to mention is going to be Aundre Estime for the Broncos. Look, big back, 220. He's a bruiser. He's the type of back that's going to be a great complement with Javonte Williams. I know they got Samaje Perine there still, but I think Perine obviously a little bit older. I think they really, really still want to get Javonte Williams in this just getting him going. I think the Broncos are not giving up on him quite yet, but I think a lot of people in the fantasy world has kind of given up on Javonte Williams. And I think Estime is going to be a nice little back that you can grab in the third round. He's going to have the ability to, I think, have some instant value this season because I think he is going to be put in situations, whether it be short yardage, whether it be just a change of pace type of situation for the Denver Broncos. I think he's going to have some value. And again, look, running backs was not something that a lot of people went after in this draft. Obviously, you got Brooks and Trey Benson. Those are probably the big two. And a lot of it has to do with their landing spots in draft capital. And that plays a big factor. Audric is really kind of the opposite. He really didn't fall in a great situation, even though I still like his situation. He obviously wasn't drafted super high. But I think if you can get him in the late third round, I think he's somebody you can stash or put on your roster and may have some value this upcoming season. And who knows, maybe Javonte just continues to deal with injuries, continues to struggle in this offense, and now he's gone. And let's be honest, the NFL teams don't really value running backs like they used to. There's a few running backs that will come in that are generational, that might get a first or second round, draft capital. But realistically, most running backs tend to be a little bit later and tend to still do well in the NFL. So I like him as a nice little stash. Now, one player I want to mention, and I've got two more, but I want to mention Javian Sanders for the Panthers. I think a lot of people are letting him fall. I think Ben Sinnot's there. Obviously, Brock Bowers is there. But I think Sanders actually could end up being my second favorite tight end in this draft. I talked about him in an article I wrote for IDP Plus. I felt like his game translated really well in the NFL, and his landing spot is perfect for Carolina. You've got a guy who I think can have instant value. He's going to be part of an offense that is growing, right? You've got an offense that struggled drastically last season. A lot of people have already given up on Bryce Young, but Bryce Young now has some weapons that he did not have last season. He's got Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. He still has Thielen. Now you put Javian Sanders in this offense, and I think this value is going to be completely different. I love that he's paired up with his running mate back in Brooks. I think that's going to be a great little pairing, some rookies there. But I like this pick for Sanders. We'll see if they're going to utilize the tight end position, right? That's something that is going to be something we're going to have to look at in the preseason and early on in the season, but I think he's a nice little steal in your late third round. Now, if we're talking tight end premium, I think Sanders probably goes into the mid-late second. But if we're just talking regular tight ends, I think he's a nice little steal that you can get in the third round. Look, there were people that didn't give Sam Laporta any draft capital in their rookie drafts, and yet he became one of the best tight ends in the league. Don't be afraid to draft a tight end like this. Late third rounds, mid-third rounds, those are just picks you're throwing around in most trades. Use those guys to grab somebody that might actually have some value on your roster. Now, the last player I'm going to mention before my honorable is going to be Milik Corley for the Jets. I think Milik Corley obviously goes into a good position because realistically, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got the aging vet in Aaron Rodgers, who we hope to see this full season. And with that said, there's not a lot of competition for Corley to come into this season. He's going to be in a position where I think he gets thrown in right away and actually could see anywhere from 50 to 60 receptions in his first season just because of the position. The fact that I'm seeing him fall into the third round in a lot of rookie drafts I've done is amazing to me. He's probably one of my favorite players to grab because I think, again, capital matters, where his position is. He's going to be thrown into a position where he's going to get plenty of targets. So Milik Corley is definitely a receiver that you should be grabbing. I'm not putting him on my taxi. I'm not going to sit him for a year or two because I think he's going to have instant value this season. I really like this pick for him. Now, my honorable mention is going to be Devante Walker for the Baltimore Ravens. I get they just signed an extension with Rashad Bateman. They've got a great receiver in Zay Flowers. And I know a lot of people obviously see the fact that Lamar Jackson doesn't throw 30 to 40 times a game. But with that said, I think even though I know there's a lot of Harbaugh believing in Bateman. And I know that they're still, giving him that contract, but I think this is the last possible chance for Rashad Bateman. I believe in Rashad Bateman, but I don't know if Rashad Bateman is going to necessarily translate really well this upcoming season. I think Tez Walker puts himself in a situation where I think he can actually fall in, be the wide receiver 3 instantly, could get more play depending on Bateman, and hopefully Bateman is healthy, but he has dealt with injuries realistically almost every single season of his career. So if Bateman does have an injury, Tez walks right into a wide receiver role right behind Zay Flowers. Now, again, Lamar Jackson's not throwing a million times a game, but I think there's going to be some value there. I think obviously Zay Flowers is going to be the clear-cut wide receiver 1. You got Mark Andrews back. I do like Likely, who still has some value in that roster. But I like Devante Walker because I think he's going to have some value for this Baltimore team. I think he's going to have a better value in the future coming. I think he's going to have, again, maybe a year or two before it really takes over that roster where he becomes the wide receiver 2. But I think the fact that, he was highly touted, at North Carolina, I thought he did really well. He didn't do very great at the Senior Bowl. I was there and he didn't really show up. But I think that his gameplay actually was a lot better than when he kind of showed up in the combine and different things like that. So I think he's a nice little honorable mention that I think you could get in the mid to late 3rd round. So those are some steals and stashes you may want to grab for your rookie dynasty. I think a lot of people obviously are doing most of their drafts, so hopefully these videos are helping you. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys check out how your first round should be, whether you're super flex or 1 QB. Again, always try to trade for players if you can. I know these draft picks have a lot of value at this moment. This is the best time to trade for absolute value, where you get some of these players that are obviously have been in the NFL and been able to be successful. Again, if you guys have any other questions for Dynasty, hit me up in the comments down below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, and I'll check you guys out next time.